my son in front of me, the mother, his three kids.
Before he killed him, I told him. I looked at him in the eye and told him, there's kids here, please. And he didn't care.
Standing outside the courthouse, Tanya Barros relives the moment a man started shooting at her son. The family was having a Father's Day cookout.
My son was standing up there by himself. I heard all these gunshots.
For some people, Father's Day is a day filled with laughter. But for others, it is a trigger. And while you celebrated a successful Father's Day, for these 5 families, it became the day they lost everything. A backyard cookout meant to be a celebration, a simple gathering of fathers, families, and friends. But that day was shattered when a man decided to shoot and kill a father in front of his children. While in another town, a man stepped outside for a walk in his neighborhood on Father's Day. Moments later, he would be found dead in Houston, Texas. What should have been a warm family gathering by the pool ended in horror. This man, Nestor Ulysses Saldana, was celebrating with his wife and children when he was shot in the head right in front of them. And in Durham, North Carolina, 32-year-old Carlos Jones pulled up to a red light, but he would never make it through the intersection, as he would be shot multiple times. More disturbingly, the man responsible is still on the run. But not all tragedies arrive with gunshots. Some are buried in paperwork and quiet decisions. That's what happened to Connie Howard. She had called to check up on her father, only to learn of the unthinkable. Someone had signed for him to be taken off of life support.
He pulled the plug on my father. And for Father's Day, my father is dead. Do you know what my father died of?
5 lives lost. 5 families shattered on Father's Day. All of them left behind the same thing: grief, outrage, and the haunting question. This is the life and death of 5 devoted fathers whose lives were cut short on a day they should be celebrating. In fact, these stories are closely similar to the story I covered last weekend. Do you remember a woman who shot her husband on Facebook?
Oh man, that's what I'm finna do. I'm finna get out. I ain't really trying to argue at all. I'm just trying to get my...
No, you want to go tell your family about this and about that. You want to do this.
I'm trying to leave from over here and agree, man. I ain't trying to argue at all.
Ain't nobody. I'm gonna take my car key off.
Got my key.
Stop.
Send it on the Joe.
If you have not watched this, I will leave the link at the end of this video. Let's take a look at the 5 fathers we lost on Father's Day, starting with Traumant Lee. 40-year-old Traumant Lee Tobin wasn't a public figure, but to his 9 children and 9 grandchildren, he was everything. A pillar of love, stability, and strength in their lives. Traumant was the kind of father and grandfather who showed up every time. He worked hard to give his family the best life he could.
Boss, man.
Traumant owned and operated Tobin's cleaning and hauling services, a small business he built from the ground up, which he ran with his nephew, Kentrell Ankrum. Friends and neighbors described him as dependable and honest, a man who could be counted on not only by his clients, but by his community. For Traumant, family always came first. He never hesitated to lend a helping hand or offer guidance to his children and grandchildren. His mother, Karen Sears, once said that every holiday spent with him was precious. Traumant was the kind of man who made the ordinary feel special. Traumant poured his heart into creating memories his family would never forget, but no one would see the tragedy about to come. On Sunday, June 19th, 2022, a warm and peaceful Father's Day afternoon in the Taylorberry neighborhood of Louisville. At around 4:40 p.m., the Louisville Metro Police would receive an emergency call after neighbors heard multiple gunshots on the 1200 block of Central Avenue. When officers arrived on the scene, they were met with a devastating sight. Emergency responders found 40-year-old Traumant Tobin lying lifeless on the ground. Upon closer inspection, they discovered he had suffered multiple gunshot wounds. Despite efforts to save him, Traumant was pronounced dead at the scene. Who would want Traumant dead and why? The police knew they had their work cut out for them and that the clock was ticking. The sooner they began, the better their chances of identifying the person responsible for Tramont's murder.
That's right. We begin tonight with that breaking news. The violence in the metro continuing as another life is lost. Good evening to you. I'm Lauren Adams. A man is shot and killed on this Father's Day weekend in the Taylor-Berry neighborhood. This video just back to our newsroom, and at this hour, police remain on scene in the 1200 block of Central Avenue. They responded there around 4:40 this afternoon to discover a man who'd been shot multiple times. We're told the victim died at the scene. Police are still investigating.
Investigators started canvassing the neighborhood and asking anyone who might have seen or heard something to come forward. But at first, no one seemed to have answers. Neighbors were shaken, confused, and terrified. And then they found something. The truth, however, was even more horrifying than anyone imagined. According to court documents, a breakthrough came when police obtained doorbell camera footage from outside the home of 47-year-old Gregory Lynn Bell. But what investigators saw was horrifying. In the footage, 40-year-old Traumant Tobin could be seen arriving at the residence, walking up to the 47-year-old Gregory Lynn Bell. The two men appeared to exchange a few words. From their body language, it didn't seem like they were strangers. In fact, it looked like they knew each other. The exchange was calm at first, almost casual, but within moments, no one saw the tragedy coming. Without warning, Gregory suddenly pulled out a firearm and opened fire, shooting Traumant multiple times at point-blank range. Traumant collapsed to the ground, but what happened next made the video even more chilling. Allegedly, Gregory then wiped off the gun, removing any trace of his fingerprints before placing it next to Traumant's lifeless body. It was a move that felt calculated, almost rehearsed. He showed no signs of panic, no remorse, no urgency to flee. The video left investigators shaken and provided irrefutable evidence of what had occurred that Father's Day afternoon. It wasn't a confrontation or an argument that led up to the violence. No escalation. Just cold, calculated brutality. Police knew they had their suspect. With the doorbell footage in hand and mounting evidence, they wasted no time. Within days, 47-year-old Gregory Lynn Bell was arrested and charged with murder, tampering with physical evidence, and possession of a handgun by a convicted felon. He was booked into the Louisville Metro Corrections Facility.
Yeah, Jennifer, Rick, it was just in the block behind me where a bullet ended the life of Traumant Tobin. Police say video evidence shows a man by the name of Gregory Bell walked up and shot him. Bell is now behind bars, but Tobin's family is still struggling with the loss.
From the beginning, Gregory tried to justify the killing. He told investigators the shooting was in self-defense, a claim that makes no sense in light of the surveillance footage, which showed no visible threat or aggression from Traumant. But the road to justice would be anything but smooth. After 2 long years of waiting and grieving, on September 23, 2024, Gregory Bell stood before a judge and pleaded guilty to the charges against him. Then on November 1, 2024, he was officially sentenced to 25 years in prison. In court, Gregory offered an apology to Traumant's family. He claimed once again that he had acted out of fear.
Trey, I'm sorry. I was in fear for my life. Scared played a factor in this. And I was at my own home. I did not come out looking for you.
But to the family, the doorbell camera footage was clear and damning.
Never talking to him. Was not raising his voice. There was no argument. There was no reason for him to feel threatened.
You wasn't scared. You sitting on the porch waiting for my baby. I watched the video. I watched you kill my baby on video. You wasn't threatened. I don't accept your apology. And I would never, ever accept your apology, because that's my baby boy you took from me and my family.
What remains most painful for Traumant's family is the absence of clarity. To this day, they say they still don't understand what led up to the shooting. Traumant and Gregory weren't strangers. They had known each other. In fact, Traumant's family had once considered Gregory a family friend. While the guilty plea and sentencing offer a measure of justice, it does little to mend the heartbreak. Traumant's children and grandchildren now live with a permanent void.
Mom, wish your bad boy. I want to wish you a very special happy birthday. Happy birthday! Love you.
This is all I got left of my baby's voice.
The aftermath of Traumant's death sent ripples of heartbreak and resolve throughout Louisville. In November 2023, the pain was met with purpose. At Immaculate Heart of Mary Church, parishioners gathered for a solemn service of remembrance. Candles were lit for lives lost. Prayers were offered for grieving families. The annual ceremony, dedicated to victims of violence, brought together clergy, religious sisters, community members, and city leaders, all united in mourning and in mission. But remembrance alone wasn't enough.
Why city and community leaders are unsettled by what happened. In response to Tobin's death, a walk to end gun violence was held in West Louisville Sunday, led by organization Mike's Up, Guns Down. Metro Councilman Ja'Cory Arthur helped organize the event and says Tobin's death, while tragic, is the result of people normalizing this sort of behavior.
My little brother just got shot 4 times a few weeks ago. I'm dealing with the trauma of my friend being killed just last year.
Activists and local officials wanted action. In West Louisville, the grassroots organization Mike's Up, Guns Down joined forces with Metro Councilman Ja'Cory Arthur to host a walk to end gun violence. The march, which was held on Father's Day, was a powerful statement, a call for peace, for reform, and for accountability. Traumant Tobin was a man who had spent his life giving to his children, grandchildren, and community. In a brutal blink, his life was taken. But those who knew him refused to let the violence define him. He was more than the way he died. Traumant was a father, a grandfather, a friend, and a man who tried to leave behind something better than he found. While Louisville was grieving Traumant's death, hundreds of miles away, a beloved stepfather was celebrating Father's Day, unaware it would be his last.
Before he killed him, I told him. I looked at him in the eye and told him, "There's kids here, please." And he didn't care.
30-year-old Nestor Ulises Salana was more than just a man trying to make ends meet. He was a pillar of his family, both in the United States and back home in Guanajuato, Mexico. Born and raised in Mexico before building a new life in the U.S., Nestor carried with him the values of love, loyalty, and hard work. He had dreams not just for himself, but for the people he loved most.
Even though we were his stepkids, he never treated us differently. He loved us all.
In his home, Nestor was both a husband and a father, not just biologically, but wholeheartedly. Though some of the children were not his by blood, you would never know it. To Nestor, they were all his. He showed up for them in every way that mattered. Outside the home, Nestor wore many hats. He was a provider, working hard in the U.S. to support his immediate family while also sending help back to Mexico. His sense of responsibility knew no borders. Friends and loved ones remember Nestor as a man with a gentle soul and a joyful heart. He loved music.
He loved to dance. There wasn't no song he didn't know.
He was always ready to dance, especially when surrounded by the people he loved. He found joy in spending time with his wife and kids, going out on family outings, and making memories that would last a lifetime. Laughter came easily when he was around. He was the kind of man who, even in difficult times, held his family together with strength and grace. But on one Father's Day, everything changed. On June 18, 2023, Father's Day, families across the country came together to celebrate the men who had shaped their lives. Fathers, stepfathers, grandfathers, and father figures. In the heart of a Magnolia Park apartment complex neighborhood in Houston, Texas, the Hernandez Saldaña family was no different. Deborah Hernandez, Nestor's devoted wife, and their children gathered to honor the man who had poured his heart into their lives. But for Nestor Ulises Saldaña, this wasn't just any Father's Day. It was a double celebration.
Yes. I wish he would have been here long enough to meet his grandchild, but...
Alongside the Father's Day celebration, the family was also celebrating a beautiful milestone. His stepdaughter, Jacqueline Gonzalez, was expecting her first child. The idea of becoming a grandfather filled Nestor with pride. He often spoke about the joy of holding his first grandchild and about the love he couldn't wait to give. But that future would never come. That afternoon, the Saldaña Hernandez family made their way to the community pool at their apartment complex. Nestor was in his element, laughing, joking. At one point, with a big grin on his face, he dove into the pool alongside his stepdaughter, but it would become one of their final moments together. A few hours into the celebration, the peaceful gathering began to shift. A young child the daughter of another resident, 29-year-old Anthony Campos Galvan Jr., got out of the pool and left. Galvan also lived in the complex and had come to the pool area that day with his own family. But when she returned, she wasn't alone. The child had returned with her father, Anthony. However, something was noticeably off. There was an unsettling energy. It looked like he was angry. No one knows exactly what triggered his mood, but witnesses recall that Anthony appeared agitated from the moment he arrived, and within minutes, the day would take a violent turn. Witnesses shared that an argument broke out between Anthony and Nestor, but what started as a verbal exchange quickly spiraled into something far more dangerous. Anthony was furious and visibly agitated, but what happened next shocked everyone. Anthony pulled out a pistol and struck Nestor across the head. The blow left Nestor dazed and injured, and the sight of a man being pistol whipped at a family-friendly gathering sent a wave of panic through the crowd. But even after the violent outburst, Anthony didn't seem fazed. Instead, he did something surprising. He stormed out of the pool area and went towards his car, a red Jeep Wrangler with oversized red rims. On the other hand, Nestor, who was shaken, was not going to back down. He followed Anthony as he walked toward the parking lot. While it's unclear exactly what words were exchanged, but what happened next would leave witnesses horrified and a family shattered. As Nestor approached Anthony's vehicle, Anthony allegedly pulled out a gun and fired at Nestor in close range. The single fatal shot struck Nestor in the head. Immediately, chaos erupted. Screams filled the air as Nestor's family witnessed everything. Emergency services were called immediately, and first responders rushed to the scene. Nestor was transported to the hospital, but despite their best efforts, he succumbed to his injuries. Anthony had immediately fled the scene after the shooting in his vehicle. During the investigation, the Houston police were able to identify 29-year-old Anthony Campos Galvan as the suspect through eyewitness accounts. Deborah, who said,
I looked at him in the eye and told him, there's kids here, please. And he didn't care.
Picked him out from a photo lineup within seconds. Multiple witnesses who were present at the pool that day confirmed his identity, providing a consistent description of both the man and the distinctive red Jeep Wrangler he drove. Once his identity was confirmed, authorities acted swiftly and a manhunt was issued. They released his name and photograph to the public, urging anyone with information about his whereabouts to come forward immediately. A $5,000 reward was offered by Crime Stoppers for any information that would lead to his arrest. But just when it seemed he'd vanished for good, a sudden breakthrough changed everything. On August 28, 2023, more than 2 months after the fatal shooting, 29-year-old Anthony Campos Galvan was finally located. He was arrested at a border checkpoint in Brownsville, Texas, as he attempted to cross into Mexico. Anthony was taken into custody without incident and charged with murder. Nestor's death shattered his family and left his community in mourning. For his loved ones, there is no undoing the horror of that day. He was a man who deeply loved his wife, his children, and even those he took in as his own. He worked tirelessly, not just to provide for his household in Houston, but also to send support back to relatives in Guanajuato, Mexico. A GoFundMe was set up by Nestor's wife, Deborah Hernandez, to help with funeral expenses and to support the children he left behind. His loss left a void impossible to fill, but his memory lives on in the smiles of the children he raised and those lucky enough to have known him. The tragedy of Nestor's death was devastating, but for another family, that pain wasn't new. They had lived it years earlier when Carlos Jones was taken too soon. 32-year-old Carlos Jones wasn't just a loving father. He was a man whose presence brought comfort, laughter, and light to everyone around him, a gentle giant in many ways. Carlos was known for his calm demeanor, his deep loyalty to family and friends, and his dedication to the people he loved. He had a way of making everyone feel like family, whether you were a lifelong friend or someone he'd just met. Carlos treated you with kindness and respect. He had a strong work ethic, often taking on extra shifts or side jobs to ensure his children had everything they needed. Despite the demands of life, Carlos never let the stress of adulthood dim his spirit. He was playful with his kids, patient with his loved ones, and always the first to crack a joke when tensions ran high. Those who knew Carlos best say his love for his kids was unmatched.
Streeter wonders how she'll tell her daughters, 2 and 4, about their dad and how much he adored them.
That's the part that that I need strength for. Like, it's the hard part, because especially for Naya, the 4-year-old, like, she's head over heels about her dad.
But there was something else about him people never forgot: his smile. Even if you were having a bad day, Carlos made it better. You just knew when he was around, things would be okay.
The only thing I remember was just that smile, that woman smile. And I think that's what a lot of people are going to remember him from. Someone that regardless of what was going on in his life, he always carried that welcoming smile.
But what happened next, no one could have prepared for. It was a quiet Father's Day evening in Durham in June 2018. Around 6:30 p.m., officers with the Durham Police Department responded to a report of a shooting on Stadium Drive near North Duke Street, a largely residential area not far from downtown. But what they found at the scene was shocking. When officers arrived at the scene, they found 32-year-old Carlos Jones slumped over and unresponsive, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. Emergency responders quickly transported him to Duke University Hospital, but despite efforts to save him, Jones was later pronounced dead from his injuries. Witnesses later told authorities that as Carlos Jones pulled up to the traffic light at the corner of Stadium Drive and North Duke Street, another vehicle approached from behind. Little did he know what was about to happen. Without warning, someone inside opened fire, striking him multiple times before speeding off. Nearby residents reported hearing several gunshots and rushed outside to see what had happened. Witnesses also reported that the shooter quickly fled the scene, getting back into their vehicle and driving off. However, no one was able to provide a clear description of the car, leaving investigators with few immediate leads. But another violent act would set off alarm bells. About 30 minutes after the shooting and less than 5 miles away, another violent incident unfolded: a carjacking and shooting near Canal Street. While authorities have not confirmed any direct connection between the two incidents, the close timing and proximity have raised serious concerns. Detectives are now investigating whether the two events might be linked, possibly suggesting a broader pattern or motive behind the violence. But while detectives worked to connect the dots, others faced a different kind of pain. Less than 24 hours after the shooting, Carlos Jones's loved ones, stunned, heartbroken, and searching for answers, returned to the spot where his life was taken. They lit candles, shared memories, and leaned on one another, trying to make sense of the unimaginable loss. For many, it was the first step in a long road of grief, standing together in the very place where violence had shattered their world, determined not to let Carlos be forgotten. They released 32 balloons, one for each year he lived, and remembered his smile in silence. Carlos Jones was a devoted father, a brother, a son, and a friend. Now his daughters and son will grow up with only stories and photos of the man who loved them so deeply. But one question haunts everyone: who pulled the trigger, and why was Carlos a target? In November of 2020, 2 years after the tragic shooting that took the life of 32-year-old Carlos Jones, investigators still hadn't made a breakthrough. Despite combing through leads, reviewing surveillance footage, and conducting interviews, no suspects had been identified. The case remains unsolved. For Carlos's family, the silence has been just as painful as the loss. Each year that passes without answers feels like a wound that refuses to heal. They continue to hold on to hope that someone, somewhere, will come forward with the truth. On Thanksgiving Day, as many gathered with their families, Carlos Jones's loved ones came together, this time not in mourning alone, but in action. They held a memorial while pleading with the public for help. A $5,000 reward was announced for any information that could lead to an arrest in his unsolved murder.
If anyone has, any information on my father's death, we do, have a $5,000 reward. So if you come forward, then the reward obviously would be granted to you. We just want peace. We want closure. Again, like he said, this is the second year that my father hasn't been there for us here at Thanksgiving, and I know that other people have lost their loved ones and all, as well.
Carlos's family continues to live with the weight of unanswered questions. His children deserve more than echoes and silence. They deserve the truth, and a future their father never got to see. As Carlos's loved ones lit candles in his memory, hundreds of miles away, another family's world was about to collapse under the weight of a different kind of horror.
He killed my son in front of me, the mother, his 3 kids.
Stacy Coleman's family tells me he was a dad of 3 at a Father's Day cookout when they say he was shot and killed by a man he didn't know.
33-year-old Stacy Coleman was more than just a devoted father to 3 children, Skyla Coleman, Stacy Coleman Jr., and Casey Coleman. He was the glue that held his circle together. He was the beloved son of James M. Coleman and Tanya L. Adams Barrows. A hardworking bricklayer by trade, Stacy built more than just walls. He built trust, loyalty, and love in the lives of those around him. To many, he wasn't just family. He was a brother, a mentor, and a friend who never hesitated to show up when it mattered most. Whether it was with a quick joke or a warm smile, Stacy had a way of making people feel at ease. His presence was steady, strong, dependable, but that smile would be snatched away. It was Father's Day evening, June 20th, 2021, around 8:36 p.m. on Danube Street in Boston's Dorchester neighborhood. A backyard cookout was in full swing. Families had gathered, music floated through the warm air, children played just steps away, and laughter filled the yard. It was a scene of joy, of love, and of simple togetherness. Stacy stood among his loved ones, sharing a light moment, smiling the way he always did. But the peace would suddenly shatter. Suddenly, a flurry of gunshots tore through the celebration. Panic erupted. People ducked for cover, and Stacy collapsed to the ground. Emergency responders arrived quickly to find Stacy had been shot in the chest. He was immediately rushed to a nearby hospital, but the injuries were too severe. Stacy was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. His mother, Tanya Barrows, had been there. She saw everything. The celebration turned to heartbreak before her eyes. The pain of watching her son's final moments is something she says she'll carry forever. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not to Stacy. Not on Father's Day. Not in front of his family. Who fired the shots that took Stacy's life, and why? But the truth would come faster than anyone expected.
Standing outside the courthouse, Tanya Barrows relives the moment a man started shooting at her son. The family was having a Father's Day cookout.
My son was standing up there by himself. I heard all these gunshots.
Investigators say Stacy Coleman was pronounced dead at the hospital.
Within days of the shooting, authorities identified 35-year-old Ira Grayson of Manchester, New Hampshire, as the suspected shooter. Investigators allege that Grayson had been at the same Father's Day cookout as Stacy, and that an argument broke out between the two men. What began as a verbal altercation quickly turned deadly when Grayson reportedly pulled out a gun and fired the fatal shots that struck Stacy in the chest. In the immediate aftermath of the shooting, police stated that a second victim had shown up at a Boston hospital with what appeared to be non-life-threatening injuries, but prosecutors revealed a surprising twist. The second victim was Grayson himself. He had driven himself to the hospital with a gunshot wound to the arm, raising questions about whether the incident was more complex than it initially seemed. Despite being wounded, Grayson was soon taken into custody. But for Stacy's grieving family, justice was only beginning to take shape.
Today, the man accused of killing him, 35-year-old Ira Grayson, appeared in court behind a closed door.
What's he doing on the street? What is he doing on the street?
The man who was once part of a holiday celebration is now the central figure in a murder investigation. Grayson was arrested at the hospital where he had sought treatment for his gunshot wound. According to prosecutors, when authorities took him into custody, he was allegedly in possession of illicit drugs. That discovery would only add to the growing list of charges against him. Ira was officially charged with murder, unlawful possession of a firearm, and multiple drug offenses. What came next would uncover far more than anyone expected. Ira Grayson had always had a troubling history with the law. He'd been arrested multiple times and previously convicted on federal gun charges in New Hampshire.
Grayson has been arrested multiple times and convicted on federal gun charges in New Hampshire. He was out on probation.
Should never been out. Should never been out.
Police say there was a second shooter who hit Grayson, but don't know who it was.
At the outcome of the shooting, he was out on probation, a fact that would later weigh heavily in court. On July 13th, during court proceedings, Prosecutor Jennifer Hickman told the jury during the opening argument that the cookout at Winthrop Playground off Danube Street in Boston's Dorchester neighborhood had started out like any other gathering, with families and laughter in the air. Hickman explained that Stacy Coleman's family wasn't the only one hosting a Father's Day event at the playground that evening. Another nearby group, made up of familiar neighborhood faces, was also celebrating. Among them was Ira Grayson, a man Coleman didn't personally know. At some point, a verbal altercation broke out between Coleman and Grayson. What began as an exchange of words quickly escalated into something far more dangerous, something that would end in gunfire. The argument had gotten so intense that Stacy Coleman's mother had to physically step in and separate the two men. After that, Ira Grayson left the park, but what happened next would change everything. According to prosecutor Jennifer Hickman, Ira returned shortly before 8:30 p.m., now armed. Hidden inside a fanny pack was a pistol. Hickman told the court he came back with one intent, and one intent only: to kill Stacy Coleman. Ira positioned himself in the street and opened fire into the park. Stacy, caught off guard but reportedly armed himself, returned gunfire. What followed was pure chaos. In the exchange, Coleman was struck on his left chest side. Paramedic Ryan Hickey testified that it took just 11 minutes to rush Coleman to Boston Medical Center, but despite the speed of response, the damage was already done. At 9:08 p.m., Stacy Coleman was pronounced dead. Defense attorney James Sultan pushed back strongly against the prosecution's narrative, saying the prosecutor's story sounded pretty good, but anyone can tell a story. That doesn't make it true. Sultan told the jury during his opening statement that at a murder trial, it isn't enough for the prosecution to make up a story. They would have to prove it with evidence. On July 27, 2023, nearly 2 years after Father's Day turned fatal, Ira Grayson was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the Stacy Coleman family, the guilty verdict was a step forward, but it was not healing. No sentence could ever bring Stacy back or erase the pain of losing him in such a senseless public act of violence. His absence would be missed in every holiday and every milestone. And while justice may have been served in court, the true cost of that day will always be felt in the hearts of those who loved him most. Stacy Coleman's tragic death is a reminder of how a celebration can turn into a tragedy in just seconds. But not every loss comes from a bullet. Some tragedies unfold in silence. That was the case for Connie Howard. On Father's Day, many of us post pictures, write tributes, or simply call to say, "I love you." But for Connie Howard, Father's Day 2021 didn't bring celebration, it brought death. And not just any kind of death, one that, according to her, came without warning, without consent, and without her knowledge.
Hi, YouTube family, Hairlistas, Facebook, Twitter. This is my Father's Day rant, and this is a very serious topic for me, and it's very fresh. Last night, I got a call from my auntie that she provided permission to the hospital, along with some of my other relatives, to pull the plug on my father.
It was a late Saturday night when Connie's phone rang. On the other end was her aunt. The news? Devastating.
They had not even informed me he was in the hospital.
Her father, who she hadn't even known was hospitalized, had just been taken off life support. And worse, the hospital had gotten permission from relatives, but not from her. She was his daughter. She held conservatorship, but no one told her. She says she had spoken to family just weeks earlier, asking about her father's condition. The response she got?
When I said, "How's my father?" "Oh, he's just fine."
But he wasn't. In fact, according to Connie, he had been hospitalized for over a month. Connie says she immediately told the family she did not consent to pulling the plug. She demanded the name of the hospital. No one gave it to her. She had to piece it together through other relatives. Finally, she found it. But when she called, little did she know what was about to happen.
At that point, I told them I did not agree, and they could not pull the plug on my father. I asked for the name of the hospital. They did not provide it. I had to search through other family members until somebody told me what hospital my father was in. I called the hospital. The hospital treated me like a criminal. Relative with conservative right over him. My father's been insane for 25 years. My father's a drug addict. He's never been able to make appropriate choices for himself. If there was a right choice on the wall, if there were 10 right choices on the wall, and one choice was lousy, my dad always hit that one bad one. But I never held him responsible for it because I knew he just didn't know any better.
She fought through the phone lines, repeating that she held conservatorship, that her father was not of sound mind, that for decades she had advocated for him, and that this time would be no different. According to Connie, her father had a long battle with mental illness and addiction. He had always struggled to make good decisions.
Chief clinical officer's name is Scott, and his phone number is 2. He pulled the plug on my father. And for Father's Day, my father is dead. Do you know what my father died of? Atrium Hospital did surgeries on my father, and they did not treat his wounds effectively. So he received numerous infections, and they gave him antibiotics for each infection that he got at. And they would do another surgery, he would get another wound, they'd give him another antibiotic. He developed an immunity for antibiotics. And so he couldn't respond anymore, and he needed to be transferred to a specialty hospital where he could receive treatment that Atrium Hospital was not capable of doing because they were the ones who were negligent.
Connie insists that her father was still fighting, that he wanted to live, that he could have lived if the hospital had done its job. She says he underwent 2 surgeries, but his wounds weren't treated properly. Infections set in. More antibiotics were given, then more infections, then more antibiotics, until his body couldn't take it anymore. According to her, instead of transferring him to a specialty hospital equipped to treat his condition, they gave up. They pulled the plug. Connie believes this wasn't just bad communication. She believes it was negligence, and maybe even wrongful death. In her words,
I'm saying to you, no one should be able to sign their life away. If you have a father, a good one, a bad one, if you love them, if you have a lot of hostility towards them, if there's any way you can understand my frustration at my rights as a daughter being usurped because an insane man signs a document and has no knowledge. A man who couldn't possibly know what he was doing. And then understanding that in our society, how many of us have gotten married and then found out that we were tricked, so then we divorce. Well, when you have signed your life away, that means you are dead. That's how you find out you're tricked. Therefore, in our society, no one should be allowed to sign their life away.
Especially someone who's mentally incompetent, and especially when someone else holds conservatorship. This wasn't just Connie's grief. It's her call to action and better policies. My thoughts are with Connie. I hope you found the comfort and support you needed during such a painful time. No one should have to fight so hard after such a loss, and may your father continue to rest peacefully. These were 5 fathers who lost lives on Father's Day. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Is there a way you think the community would be improved for the better? Here are a few more videos you might like.